My name is Asad Lalji, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you here tonight. As you may know, today is Baisakhi, and the Punjabis are celebrating, and it coincides, and so our event coincides with the Festival of New Beginnings. Avid Learning, in collaboration with the Marg Foundation and the Yes Global Institute, are proud to present this evening discussion to celebrate the launch, actually the Mumbai launch, of Punjab, Building the Land of the Five Rivers. This new Marg publication, which I hope you'll all have bought. I don't see too many copies out there. So please go buy some. Meticulously showcases the best of Punjab and its diverse heritage. And to celebrate all things Punjabi, tonight's panel of experts will continue the conversation on topics ranging from Punjab's breathtaking architecture and its traditional princely cuisine, from its Mughal heritage to its Sufi and Sikh cultural influences. Author Arjun Gain will be in conversation with the editor of the book and conservation architect Abha Narayan Lamba, journalist and founding editor of The Wire, Siddharth Bhatia, consulting author and journalist Neha Prasada. But before we begin the conversation, I'm going to take a minute to tell you a little bit about Avid Learning. Many of you have attended our programs before, but there are a few new faces. Avid Learning is a public programming platform. It's the cultural arm of the SR Group. We started with a vision of presenting the best of Indian and international thinkers, writers, artists, practitioners in the field of art, literature, culture and heritage, and innovation. And we do so in engaging formats like workshops, masterclasses, lecture demonstrations, and panel discussions such as this. Since our inception, we've done over 700 programs, and we've connected with over about 85,000 people. And it kind of gives hope to our tagline that learning never stops. This would not have been possible without you loyal patrons and our contributors and collaborators. One such collaborator is sitting here today, and this evening has been curated specially for Abha Narayan Lamba and her new book. There's a joke at Avid. Every day we thank Abha and then we blame her for getting us involved in the Royal Opera House. I'm just kidding. But look forward to many, many more collaborations. This is going to be a fun evening. Please get social. Tweet, retweet, post, repost, tag. Our handle is @AvidLearning, #LearningNeverStops. Before Urshila introduces the panel formally, I'm going to invite Radhika Sabhawala from Marg to say a few words. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Hello, friends, and thank you for being here with us this evening. Thanks, Asad. Thanks to Avid Learning. A big thanks also to the museum and to the Yes Institute. I don't know how many of you know this, but Marg turned 70 before independent India did, just before. So, in 1946, on the eve of independence, we're very proud to say it was a son of Punjab, Mulk Raj Anand, who founded Marg, first as a magazine and then as a publisher of books. This was his way of being involved in nation building, to set the tone of standards and ideas for a new nation, ideas that are as relevant today as they were then. Mulk believed that architecture was the mother of art, so I think Abha would be very happy to hear that. And I'd like to quote something that was written about Mulk in a book that we published on the eve of his 100th birthday, and unfortunately he passed on when he was 99, so he didn't live to see the book, but he was very involved in the putting together of that book. I quote, "Architecture was a site where questions of art, design, social change, democracy and history were most closely tied. And for Mulk Raj Anand, it was the most profound testing ground." Unquote. The book that we are here to launch today examines sites and the religious and cultural traditions that shape them. through its focus on small towns, along with major cities such as Lahore and Amritsar, it marks the 70th year of independence and of partition, producing insights on very important multicultural legacies. I think this whole point, multicultural legacies, shared histories, is what we're here to talk about today. Histories that survive from both sides of the border. And I'm very, very proud that Marg has been part of this effort. And I thank Abha and all the writers who have put this book together. Now I'll leave you to get on with enjoying this evening.
Congratulations, Marg, on your wonderful milestone. On to our panel this evening. I'd like to now welcome our speakers on stage with a little bit about each of them. First, we have editor of the book and conservation architect, Abha Narain Lamba. Her architectural practice covers a range of monuments across India, from 15th century temples in Hampi and Ladakh to colonial buildings in Mumbai, Kolkata, and New Delhi. From historic palaces and forts in Punjab, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh to ancient archaeological sites in Odisha, Maharashtra, Jharkhand, and Gujarat. She has been advisor to museums such as the Victoria Memorial and Indian Museum, Kolkata, Prince of Wales Museum in Mumbai, the Chau Mahalla Palace, Hyderabad, Lal Bagh Palace, Indore, and Jaivilas Museum, Gwalior. She has also been involved with many urban and streetscaping projects and is active with various citizens groups. She has edited a range of books including Architecture of the Indian Sultanates, Custodians of India's Heritage, 150 Years of the Archaeological Survey of India, and Shekhavati, Land of the Merchant Princes. Welcome to you, Abha. Our next panelist is Neha Prasada. Neha is an author and journalist based in New Delhi. She has written extensively on health, politics, governance, environment, and social issues. She is a contributing editor to Architectural Digest magazine and also contributes to Condé Nast Traveler, Vogue, and Mint Lounge. With a keen interest in food history and world cuisine, she recently curated a food festival celebrating the regional food of Jammu, Kashmir, and Ladakh. Her debut coffee table book, Dining with the Maharajas, has been very well received. She is a contributing author to Punjab, Building the Land of the Five Rivers. Welcome, Neha, all the way from Delhi. Thank you for being here. Next, we have Siddharth Bhatia. He is a Mumbai-based journalist and author. He is the founding editor of The Wire and has written several books on cinema and popular culture. We're glad to have you here today, Siddharth. Finally, our moderator for this evening is author Arjun Gain. He is the author of A Very Pakka Murder, published by HarperCollins India and Poisoned Pen Press USA. It is the first in a trilogy chronicling the adventures of Sikandar Singh, a Maharaja with a penchant for his mysteries, set against the backdrop of princely India during the heyday of the British Raj. The second installment, titled Death at the Darbar, is due for release early this November. Arjun is also the creator and author of several critically acclaimed best-selling comic books. Welcome to you, Arjun, and over to you.
Thank you all for being here today. It's wonderful to see so many Punjabis in the same room when it's not a wedding or a funeral. And also now that the snacks have been served, it's gratifying to see that you've decided to stay on for the talkative bits. I am very proud of being Punjabi. I don't think I can separate it from my identity. The Punjab, I think, that Abha has chosen to chronicle and to write about in this wonderful book is a very different place from what Punjab is today. historically, Punjab has had a very tumultuous and checkered history, beginning from the earliest civilizations of the Indus, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, to the Mughal age and the rise of Sikhism, to the princely era of the Lahore court of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and then, of course, the Phulkians, who were some of the most colorful characters.
Who once again ruled Punjab.
Who did?
Captain Amrinder Singh.
Yes, who are back now, and who ironically was my father's classmate many years ago. But to modern Punjab, of course, which endured partition, the Haryana divide, 1984 and Blue Star, and of course, what's happening today, where Punjabis have almost become the most relentless of global consumers, who have spread around the world, their diaspora. I mean, they say wherever you go, you'll find at least one Punjabi running a shop. But I think, ostensibly, while the book is about Punjab and its history and its architecture, I think, Abha, this charming journey that you have taken us all on is also a very personal one. There's this wonderful story you tell at the very beginning about one of your ancestors, and after Chillenwala, how he ran home to his family. And I think that's what really unites all Punjabis, a love of history and a love of stories. So I'd love it if you'd begin by commenting about why you chose to put this book together.
I come from a mixed home. My father is not Punjabi, but my mother is very proudly one. And I would always notice her talking to any Punjabi anywhere, it was always being posted from one place to the other. The moment she would find somebody who was Punjabi, the first question she would ask is, "Tusi kitho de ho?" And the moment they'd open their mouth, they would judge, "Tusi Doaba de ho, tusi Sialkot de ho, tusi Pindi to ho." And there was the little nuances and the way of speaking or the intonation of certain words. And it would always, as a child, really intrigue me as to how just by the pronunciation of a particular word, she would put that across. And then everything used to be, "Kad hoya si partition to pehla ya partition to baad?" So like we have before Christ and AD. So for Punjabis, the only milestone is the partition. And I think 1947 to the rest of India, the first idea would be independence and the tricolor. But for every Punjabi, it's been of just horrible massacres, losing your homes, losing your family members. And I think that's something that continues to this day, because to this day, when my mother, who's in her 70s, 3 years ago, I took her to Lahore with me. And like a little child, she wanted to go to Gwal Mandi and eat kulfi there, and she wanted to go try out this sweetmeat at a particular shop. My mother-in-law is from Rawalpindi, and the two of them would always have this thing about whose food is better. And that brings us back to Neha's, that Pindi de chole and those. And my mother was like, during my wedding, was like, "Pindiyan di barat hai, but you really have to be careful. They're like major foodies, the food better be good." So I think that was something that I always encountered growing up. And at the same time, there was this intense sense of loss that a lot of Punjabis go through, loss of their homeland, the ones who had to leave, come in from West Punjab, which is now in Pakistan. And at the same time, I think generally Punjabis are known to be, boisterous, fun-loving, live in the present. And to me, a lot of that stems from the fact that from the time of literally the Indo-Aryan migrations, you've really had everybody coming into India, coming through Punjab. So this was the highway to get to India. So whether it was, the Timurids, the Sultanates period, or the Mughals, and then the fact that in a span of 12 years, you had Ahmad Shah Abdali launch 10 invasions into Punjab. So the fact is, this was the route which suffered the maximum amount of bloodshed, pillage, looting, from the Mongols to just Timur to just about everybody. And I think that just got so deep into the Punjabi psyche that you have what you have today, and changa khao, changa pehno and kapde latte and just enjoy the moment. And I think that's something that drew me to try to understand what the Punjabi psyche and what the Punjabi culture is, because I would always hear that, oh, Punjab only has agriculture, there's no culture. And there were hardly any books written about the culture of Punjab. So I think this book, and thanks to Marg, that for the 70th year of independence, partition, as well as Marg Publications, this book, in a way, chronicles the cultural side of Punjab, of Punjabis. And when you see some of these, you see the interiors of the Sheesh Mahal in Kila Mubarak, Patiala, it takes your breath away because the art is so beautiful. It matches any amazing palace in Rajasthan. And very grateful thanks to Krishna Iyer, who's our photographer for the volume. Please stand up and say hi. He's traversed Punjab on tractors and trucks and buses and jeeps and has documented this amazing countryside.
Thank you so much for that, Abha. You've got me in trouble. You've answered all my questions. So, yes, I'd love to ask Siddharth the next question, which I'm making up as we speak. But, Siddharth, my grandmother had a saying. She used to say, "Upar wala karda laparwaiyan te khote khande malaiyan." That God makes mistakes and donkeys eat cream. And if you'll pardon the dairy metaphor there, but do you feel that contemporary Punjab is in some way very different from the Punjab that our grandparents inhabited? Do you feel that in some way the shared history, which was mentioned earlier, has slowly started to dwindle and fade?
So, firstly, I must say, I was born in this city. My parents came from Pakistan. This is the first time I've attended a function in which Punjab is the focus. And that's not because of want of trying or anything like that. But in my personal case, and this applies to a lot of people here, and I've noticed that in a few other communities too, there are not one but several diasporic moments, generational diasporic moments. So my father always used to say, we have come here, we have to be cosmopolitan. And so Punjabi-ness or Punjabiyat was felt only in terms of, say, food, say, for example. And because he was personally fond of some music, culture, that kind of thing. But otherwise, when I went there in the 80s to cover the militancy, I've been there several times during the 80s and met all the players. And when I went for the first time and I said, I'm visiting Amritsar and going to the Golden Temple and everything, he says, I have no idea what you're talking about because I grew up in Karachi and my mothers grew up and my father grew up in Karachi. So there was already that. But when I went to Punjab, I felt kinship. But I have felt that whether I met Punjabis in Canada or the US or UK, and there is of course a longing and their roots and all that, and Bombay especially, and if you go to the so-called Punjabi areas, that there is I won't say conflict, but a kind of a nice tension of being cosmopolitan and also being somebody who has a sense. So some of these experiences have never been felt by me. They were felt when I used to talk to my grandmother, but never to my parents, because my parents had already distanced themselves completely. Now you're coming to contemporary, what it has become today. Of course, we read about the issues and the problems and everything. But even if you see the political trajectory of the state, even if you see there is a sense of wanting to do something all the time, you will never, for example, hear anybody from there, and I've been there several times, and I've met people, that somebody owes us something. That is a spirit that will never happen. That is a statement that will never happen. And I saw that in my own family, and I presume in most partition families who came and said, and this applies to, as I said, many other communities. You see that in the Sindhis, for example, that we have come and we've got to make the best of it. So I think making the best of it and moving on is what I've seen in the state, what I've seen outside, and what I've seen around me. I don't know whether that answers your question per se, because I'm not going to talk about contemporary Punjab politics.
I'm just incredibly impressed that you've managed to use the word sense and Punjab in the same sentence several times. So, very impressive. But, okay, I'm going to ask Neha the next question. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Of course, it's Neha's birthday. Could you tell us if there is actually, both Abha and Siddharth have mentioned food in passing, but is there really such a thing as Punjabi cuisine? Could you tell us about its origins perhaps, and is it more than just tandoori chicken and Old Monk? Because
tandoori chicken and Old Monk is definitely a very important part of it, but that's not all of it. And, Punjab, if we look at the erstwhile Punjab state, which we have looked at in this book, to put it in today's context, it included parts of Himachal Pradesh, parts of Haryana, even parts of Uttarakhand, and also Pakistan. So the Punjab as we know today and Punjabi cuisine that we know of has become limited to perhaps these states. But if you look at the erstwhile Punjab state, which I have looked at in this book, then from state to state, along with the agriculture and along with the people and along with the conditions they lived in, the cuisine changed. Of course, largely, if you look at Punjab as we know today, the food is, it's an agrarian belt. It is one of the most important agrarian belts in this country. So depending on the produce, which is a lot of importance given to dairy, to pulses, to not so much vegetables, but if you look at a Punjabi thali, it's dominated by meat.
Paneer.
Paneer. Yes, you said I must mention paneer.
No, I'm sorry, I'm no expert.
Okay.
But paneer should not be mentioned in any company because that's a travesty. So nobody should want to own it. Thank you.
Really?
Those are fighting words.
Yeah, and this is a vegetarian Punjabi who says that, yeah.
Sorry for that interjection.
Finish what you're saying.
So like I was saying, but that is where, this is when you look at it largely, that this is what the cuisine is. But in this book, we are looking at the grand old families of Punjab, the Maharajas of Punjab, the royals of Punjab, who, for them, I think, it's factually recorded that the kitchen budgets were almost as big or next to the defense budgets. Yes, it was. It's a fact that in Patiala, which was in erstwhile Punjab, Bahawalpur in Pakistan and Patiala were the largest in terms of area and revenue, and also in terms of the hierarchy. And for Patiala, the annual budget was 14 lakhs per annum, which was just next to the defense budget. And that was the kind of stress which was given to food, to hospitality, and to the staff that manned these kitchens.
That certainly explains why they lost so many wars to invaders, I guess. But to come back to what Abha said about invasions and how, Punjab is in some ways the culmination of the Silk Road. And, for more than 3,000 years, its culture has been shaped by endless invasions. And every one of those invaders has stayed behind and contributed something or the other to really its philosophy, its culture. And, an example is the Gils. The Misl of the Gils believe themselves to be descended from Seleucus' soldiers. And they're very proud of the fact that they all have green eyes. And, Gurmukhi draws inspiration in some part from Greek as well. And Urdu, which really has now become a sort of courtly and artistic language, began as the camp language of the followers. But the question I wanted to ask Abha is, to what extent do you think Punjab's location has shaped its art and architecture? And what influences did you find visible when you traveled through Punjab?
When you see Punjab and you see just the architectural heritage of Punjab, you realize that it's actually the oldest. I mean, we tend to talk about a whole lot of other places when we talk about ancient India, but very often Punjab sort of gets ignored or dismissed. But which state in India can claim to have 5,000-year-old Indus Valley Harappan sites? Harappa is part of Punjab. In places like Sanghol, where you have ancient Buddhist monuments, and then the bulk of some of the most amazing Mughal monuments and monuments of the Sultanate period are in Punjab. So between Lahore and Amritsar and beyond, you have some of the most amazing Mughal period monuments. You have, during the reign of Jahangir and Shah Jahan, 22 caravanserais that were built on the highway between Agra and Lahore. So 22 of these sarais were complete camps with enclosed gardens, with courtyards, with mosques, hammams. Sarai Duraha, which I've been working on conserving for the last 3 years, has the most beautiful Mughal wall paintings along with an intact hammam and a mosque. So you have Mughal caravanserais, you have Jahangir virtually moved base to Lahore. So in the period of Jahangir, not only do you have his own tomb, but you have the Anarkali bazaar, where really you have Anarkali's tomb. Even before, we have very few people would know that the earliest sultans, you have Gauri, who won Delhi, and then on his way to Lahore, he was actually murdered by the Gakhar clansmen in retaliation. So Gauri was killed in Lahore, and right after that, Qutbuddin Aibak, who built Qutub Minar, he died in a polo accident in Lahore and is buried there. You have the most amazing mosques, from the Badshahi Masjid in Lahore to some of the most stunning hammams in that region, beautiful Mughal gardens in Sirhind. And so if you look at the landscape of Punjab, even the first Mughal monument, which we talk of Babri Masjid in Ayodhya, but architecturally, when you look at Babri Masjid in Ayodhya, it's actually the prototype of a Lodi dome. But when you want to see a pure Samarkand prototype in India, the first you see is the Kabuli Bagh Masjid in Panipat. And then it makes sense that you have the first Battle of Panipat. So where would Babur consecrate his first mosque? It had to be Panipat. And the first, in 1989, I went looking for Babur's mosque and spent the whole day going from one pillar to post, searching for that mosque, and eventually, and asking everyone where the Kabuli Masjid is. And eventually somebody said, industrial area jao, or wahan pe there was this amazing piece of Samarkand just transplanted and put there. So it predates Humayun's tomb, it predates the Taj Mahal. So and then you have the Lahore Darbar, and by the time the Mughal empire was waning in the late 17th century, by the time of the third Battle of Panipat, 1761, you have then the resurgence of people like Ala Singh, who then established the Phulkian dynasty in Patiala, and you have the most luxurious palaces and forts in Patiala. You have obviously the whole Lahore Darbar and the layering of Ranjit Singh even in Lahore Fort. So if you go to Lahore Fort, not only do you see the Jahangir period murals, but when you go inside the Sheesh Mahal of Lahore Fort are Krishna and Radha mosaics, and those are the layering of Ranjit Singh onto Shah Jahan's monument. So it's a beautifully hybridized, very vibrant architecture that Punjab does have, and it was an absolute pleasure to be able to compare in this book. Catherine Asher has written a beautiful piece on just the Islamic monuments of Punjab across the borders, both Pakistan and India, and then across states, because Haryana too was part of this landscape, and it's a phenomenal amount of architectural legacy.
Well, Siddharth, to continue with the idea of conflict shaping culture, do you think really that Punjab, as we know it, that the idea of, you said Punjabiyat, do you think that it could be what it is, if there is such a thing, without assimilation and the inclusion of all these various ideas that people who are now dismissed as outside entities brought to India. Would you like to comment about that?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question, because when you talk about, say, Punjabiyat, and if you see the lay of the land today in this country, there is a sense of exclusivity about identity. There is a sense, you're seeing it in various parts where people are saying, this is what represents us, and the outsider could be anybody. And nobody had thought, people sitting here are people from this city. Nobody had thought the word outsider here would be applicable because everyone's an outsider. And it was used a lot some years ago, and now it's become part of us. The Punjabiyatness, if I may call it, is not about exclusion. It's about absorption. I won't say inclusion because that becomes a bit difficult then, but absorption, easy assimilation, and for that you've got to see the assimilation of the Punjabi in different parts of India, elsewhere too. I'm not saying that this is exclusivity and the kind of holding on to old-fashioned traditions does not happen. It does. You just have to see some communities in the west of Canada, for example. But otherwise, it's all about, it's not about blood. That's the one thing which is very important. It's about a sense of wanting to participate in whatever activity you are in, whatever nation you are in. And this is the one thing that always, when I read, and as a journalist, you meet people and you're interviewing them and they're talking about, this is our tradition, this is our purity, this is our blood, and these are, they need to be protected in this wonderful land of ours, which is all about multiculturalism. What is India if not a conglomeration of so many cultures? And then I had never heard that talking to, let's say, Punjabis settled in this city after partition when they came with literally nothing. You just have to go and see how they have made their lives. And nobody has ever turned around and said, this is my custom. And they say, no, this is my custom and I'm going to throw myself at it. I'll just give you a small example. I used to know a family who was hardcore Sikhs. I mean, really hardcore Sikhs. Hardcore in the sense that, they were really, and not in the political sense, but in the cultural sense, they were really hardcore Sikhs. So I met these people, and I met them in Bombay, and we were sitting around somewhere, and suddenly this lady who was sitting with me broke into the most fluent Tamil I've ever heard in my life. So I said, she was talking to somebody, and I said, so she said, no, there is a Sikh community in Madras, which is, of course, no great shakes. And then it struck me, I said, no, they must have gone there, because after partition, they went everywhere, and they must have gone to Madras, but must find out a little bit more. So then you have somebody who represented Tamil Nadu in cricket, A.G. Kripal Singh. So you find that when you go to Calcutta, you find that. And they represented, and they are there, and they are speaking that language and all that. The thing that distinguishes them are the physicality and going home and eating that kind of food, etc. But they are not saying, this is my tiny world. Which is why Punjab, I think that is why, and maybe you can tell me, that is why Chandigarh was built there. Because they said, modernity, we welcome. We welcome modernity. There was no argument about who's this, what is that, and all that. And I think modernity is a very critical argument.
Lots of rocks for rock gardens available, so there's some strange Punjabi preoccupation.
I think the idea of, well, that was somebody else.
That's true.
But the idea of cosmopolitanism, which is what I'm trying to convey, is definitely there among this community, if indeed they want to call themselves a community.
I'm going to ask Neha the next question. To continue once again, Siddharth used the word absorption. And since you're our food expert, we can talk about all the various influences that have been absorbed into Punjabi food. There are influences from Iran, from ancient Persia, from British India. It would be lovely if you could elaborate on that for us a little.
So, if you look at Punjab, and like you, Abha mentioned earlier, it was a land which was ridden with wars. There were a lot of invasions. Different dynasties have come. And in their wake, of course, came cultural influences. And I think the one place where it's evident is in the cuisine of any land. It's the people who come and assimilate in that society, and then food takes on a new personality. And the influences are visible, but what happens is that, like the Mughals came to India, and the story goes that when they came, they were very disappointed with the quality of fruit that was available, because, they came from lands which are known for the quality of their fruit. And so they got down to planting orchards. And so that became a part of the Indian diet. We didn't have that kind of fruit till they got in their experts, their horticulturists. They had orchards laid down. So the fruit changed, and the food changed. And the influences are many. But I would come back to, you were talking about Punjabiyat. I think food is a reflection of a community's personality. And Punjab's food, if you look at it with all its influences and changes, is a wonderful example of the people that they are. The flavors are bold. It's a hearty cuisine. It's and their personality, which is welcoming and extremely hospitable, shows in their cuisine and their hospitality.
So lots on the table.
Lots on the table.
And big appetites.
Really, and I have interviewed the Maharajas and their families who were known to be great hosts. They had the means, they had the interest. But if you go to any Punjabi's house, I have so many friends who are Punjabis, there's always a place on the table for you. Hospitality is a very important part
in
of
some
their
part,
culture.
the Afghan influence as well, I think,
Well,
it's carried on, or perhaps it was the other way around. Thank you for that. And Siddharth mentioned the diaspora, and so did you, about how Punjabis have spread out all over the world, and they tend to take a small piece of Punjab with them, almost like a homeland of the soul. And in fact, in some ways, the Punjabis who live abroad are even more fundamentally aggressive about what it means to be Punjabi than the people who live here. And I think in part the stereotypes and preconceived notions of what it means to be a Punjabi comes from them. And I'd love to know if, what exactly does being Punjabi mean to you? And did any of the preconceived notions that you have about being Punjabi change when you traveled through Pakistan and Punjab while researching the book?
Actually, there's layer and player and lots of butter chicken is the usual Punjabi it's something that's universal to the entire diaspora. I've met Punjabis in Chicago and in London, and they all sort of live life king size. But yes, I think one thing that does tie, I went to Lahore, and the first time I went to Lahore, I had on my visa, it was stamped Lahore and Karachi, and the second time around, they called me to Karachi, and I sort of snuck in to Lahore without a visa for 3 days, and I camped with my mother, and we didn't tell our respective husbands that we were living without valid visa documents in Lahore. But the thing is that the moment you actually interact with Punjabis across the border, there's so many things that are common that it just melts away. The whole borders and all that melts away. And then like Fawzia Qureshi, one of our authors for this book, who's written on the Sufi shrines of Pakistan, her family comes from Kapurthala, and that yearning for going and visiting that part of Punjab is as strong as for my mother or my mother-in-law, the yearning to go to Sialkot or Rawalpindi. So I think that is definitely there. The language, as I mentioned earlier, does change from riverbank to riverbank. So there's actually intonations in speech where you can pretty much figure out that Sialkot would have a certain way of speaking versus Jalandhar or the Doab region. But then they tend to have these commonalities in that whole, mitti pao and let's live king size sort of attitude. I think that's something which is truly Punjabi as far as I understand it.
So, Siddharth, talking about king size living and vast appetites that Punjabis have, do you think in some way this desire to live and live large, which sort of defines, well, not defines, but certainly is a characteristic of being Punjab? Sorry.
No, if I were to, I'm presuming you mean kind of living for the day and living in a
Do you think it comes from all the suffering that the generations have
one
endured?
could apply pop psychology.
Cheap psychology at its best.
Yeah, one could apply all that.
1 year of college psychology.
1 year of college, a course or two. But I really think that sense, again, if I may just inject a personal note, you were talking about your mother's yearning, etc. My parents came when they were in their teens, moved to Bombay. Some part of the family moved to Delhi. And for years after that, I never heard anything while I was growing up. And then when it was all about, Karachi was a lovely city, and Bombay reminds us of that. You know that a lot of them moved here, Sindhis and Punjabis moved to Bombay simply because it reminded them of Karachi. And it's lovely. So I used to ask my father, I said, don't you want to go back? He said, nah, it's over. I asked my mother, tell me the story, I'll write it down, I'll at least record it for future, for my children and all that. Ho gaya jo ho gaya. They suffered, and a lot of them suffered really badly. But this thing of not using that to live by is something that I noticed around a lot of the people.
I think probably that was a way of survival, because the largest human migration in history has been that wrecked by partition. So we don't have museums to that the way you have in the West, like the Holocaust Museum, for example, but the number of people who left their homes and lost their families in partition was just incredibly tragic. And I think what Siddharth said is that the reason Chandigarh then makes a complete break from tradition, history, past, is a very conscious statement, because this was the new capital of Punjab, and not only was Nehru looking at, creating a new language for architecture in India, but nobody wanted to talk about the past. And you talk to people of that generation, and they seem to block things out of their memory because it was too painful a memory to relive.
But if you which you've gone to Chandigarh several times, and many of us may have, the relationship with a city which is barely 60, 70 years old is quite strong. Again, traditions have built up that, there is a Chandigarh and we are associated with that
That's
Chandigarh.
true, though. I grew up, I went to school in Chandigarh, and that's where you feel how architects impose their language on a city. And my sister and I, we were little schoolgirls, and we were in class 8 and 10. And on Holi, we would wear white clothes and stand outside our house and stand there for 2 hours, and nobody would throw color at us, and we would go home crying because we went back home looking the same way as you came out on Holi. And the man responsible for this was Le Corbusier, because he designed Chandigarh with the back of the house facing the main street and the front of the house facing these alleys, and on our road were these big kothis with retired people because all their children were living abroad, and nobody would venture out with their arthritic limbs to throw color on us. Then the Punjabi has still appropriated that, and in that cubist, harsh, brutalistic, concrete design of houses that Jean Rey and Maxwell Fried designed for the citizens of Chandigarh, you have hearty Punjabi homes, and the moment you enter, there is pseudo Louis XVI stuffed velvet furniture. and they have made it home. So we, as Punjabis, also assimilate whatever is thrown at us and turn it around on its head. And it was for me homecoming, because after 22 years of working in different cities as an architect, we've just been assigned the job of restoring Corbusier's Capitol complex, so Assembly, High Court, and for me it was like, oh my God, as a schoolgirl in pigtails, I would cycle down these buildings, and that's true. It's as modernistic, as modern, as French as Corbusier could think of it, and yet there's a strong Punjabiness that's appeared in the city.
And they invented the gedi.
Yes.
Yes. Which is perhaps the most quixotic way to spend an evening. But Chandigarh is perfectly designed for that, because you drive all the way down one side. The national pastime of people who live in Chandigarh is this thing called a gedi. Yeah, so you sit in a car at 4 kilometers an hour, you drive all the way down one side of Chandigarh, then you turn around and you drive all the way back. Which is why fuel is so expensive there as well. Obviously, I went to school up north as well, but I think my Chandigarh was very different from yours. I'm the only person who's ever gotten lost there. No one told me that it's opposing sectors. I thought they were all in a line.
No, that I think is an Indian this. If you go to Delhi, S block is always next to K block. So that's a North Indian.
In Bombay, if you just drive, sooner or later you end up where you began. So everything loops around, especially South Bombay. Don't move much. Sorry. But sorry, to come back to Neha, we were talking about the idea of global Punjabis. And, Punjabi food abroad is very different from Punjabi food in India. I mean, if you go to they say wherever you plonk a group of Punjabis in the same place, you'll end up with a Punjabi restaurant. Why do you think that food, for example, if you look at Punjabi food in England, Balti cuisine,
Exactly, more Bangladesh than...
To some degree, certainly, but if you, even the chicken tikka masala, which we talked about, with Campbell soup, why do you think that's the case? Why do you think these, how much of this do you think is real cuisine and how much do you think is made up?
It's not just with Punjabi cuisine. Any Indian cuisine, if you eat it abroad, and I think across the board, whenever I've had a meal abroad and I've been craving Indian food, it's not the same. Because it is a watered down version of our food, and I really don't get it, because Indians, we are looking for authentic Italian in India. We are looking for, we want to have the real thing, and we rave about that French bistro that is open. It's just like what I had in Paris, and I just don't understand why they do that.
There's a French restaurant in Chandigarh.
There you go.
But there is also Punjabi Chinese that I highly recommend. So we've done to them as what they've done to us.
The French restaurant in Chandigarh is called Le French Restaurant.
But having said that, I'm going off, but Kapurthala, the late Maharaja Jagatjit Singh, was a famous Francophile, and that was that would be one state, one Punjab state, where they served the best of French cuisine, authentic. As authentic as it gets, and his state banquets are famous because course by course they would serve the best of French cuisine, and that is something you can elaborate on. But the architecture, the Chateau Kapurthala in Mussoorie, or the Kapurthala Palace, it's
Versailles. No, and Brigadier Sukhjit Singh, who is the grandson of Maharaja Jagjit Singh, and who was a great source of information to our book,
yes,
would mention that as a young boy, when he would come to eat at his grandfather's table, they could only speak in French.
Yes.
So there you go.
Of course, it's impossible to speak about Punjab without at least nodding one hat to religion. I think it's an inseparable part of Punjabi identity. And in a way, I think the dichotomy between, Nanak's idea of Sikhism and Guru Gobind Singh Ji's idea of Sikhism, I recently read a wonderful book called Walking with Nanak, which was by a Pakistani writer. And he talked about how this dichotomy, this sort of attempt to, a sense of loss versus a sense of belonging, has in many ways defined Punjab, not just Indian Punjab, but also Pakistani Punjab. Abha, in the book, you've mentioned Sufi influences. You've mentioned, obviously, the Golden Temple, Sikhism. If one visits Amritsar, it's like you see these two very different sides of Punjab side by side. To what degree do you think religion has really had an impact on Punjab's art and architecture?
Oh, it's actually quite substantial because when you look at, I think Sufism is I wouldn't even call it religion, perhaps it's a way of life because Sufism sometimes just transcends religious divides and you have as many Hindus and as Muslims coming to Sufi shrines across Punjab. But that was really the core essence for a long time, and it's sort of, you can see that in Bulle Shah's verses, you can see that in the poetry of Punjab, you can see that in the literature and the edifices that you see across different parts of Punjab. And then you have Sikhism, which is so rooted in the mitti of Punjab. That's why you have Amritsar and the whole sacred geography of gurdwaras that are dotted. And each one has an association with a particular Sikh guru, and there's a very strong influence. Not only that, but it's equally, it's just a spiritual experience to walk into across Lahore Fort, where you have the site of the martyrdom of Guru Arjan Dev. And at that, I was actually, it was remarkable because I went to Lahore Fort and I had a Pakistani guide with me and he showed me around, and then I said I want to go to the Samadhi of Maharaja Ranjit Singh and Guru Arjan Dev, and at the gate they would not let anyone unless they had an Indian passport. So a Pakistani passport holder was not allowed in and an Indian passport holder was allowed in. I still haven't wrapped my head around it as to why that happened. But then you see this transcendence of religion, and you also see this great amount of confluencing of Hinduism, Vaishnavism and Sikhism in all the royal palaces, because when you see Maharaja Ranjit Singh's works in interventions in Lahore Fort, you see Krishna Bhakti as a very repetitive leitmotif through the wall murals. When you walk into the painted chambers of the Kapurthala, of the Patiala princely state, the Rang Mahals and the Sheesh Mahals have beautiful images of Brahma, of Vishnu, of the whole Ras Leela of Krishna, and a whole lot of Vaishnavite imagery. And when you read the will of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, because I was looking at various British authors of the period contemporaneous to Ranjit Singh, and not only in his living time he actually made a lot of major gifts to Harmandir Sahib in Amritsar, but also to the Jwalamukhi temple in Kangra, which is a Devi shrine. He got copies of Bhagavad Gita printed for distribution. He banned cow slaughter, and he willed the Kohinoor diamond to the Jagannath temple at Puri. And that's so it's this great confluence of Vaishnavism particularly, not so much Shaivism, and Sikhism that appears in a lot of elements of
I think the Bhakti tradition as well. You see Kabir and Meera.
Because you have Guru Nanak Dev, a major part of the whole Bhakti and Sufi confluence.
And actually some Christianity too, actually later. A lot of...
Well, and John Nicholson, I believe.
yeah.
So, a small... Let's not go. I actually managed to work that into the conversation. Wonderful. But Siddharth, Abha has included several chapters by Pakistani scholars. And do you really think it is possible to talk about Punjab and exclude Pakistan? Do you think the shared, the commonality of history, language, and tradition outweighs politics of the jingoistic variety any day?
So, firstly, politics can never be out of our system or our daily quotidian kind of lives. It can never be.
Certainly not Punjabis.
Secondly, I think if you use politics as a weapon of division, then there is much available to you. Strangely, Punjabi politics, from what little I know, never refers to Pakistan in its discussions. Of course, they are absorbed with state matters, but the way Pakistan is thrown around nowadays as an omnibus statement, as a catch-all statement to say, go to Pakistan and all that, which I'm told about 10 times a day in the morning. And I want to say, well, we came from there. Why do you want to send me back? But it is not an issue. It is an issue elsewhere. So, while there is a little bit of generalization in what I am about to say, I think it does hold true. The sense of the other side is dominated by the sense of it being another Punjab rather than an alien or enemy nation. So, you'll see that, let's say, in Bengal. So East Bengal and West Bengal see themselves as Bengalis. And the same thing, I would say, it's dominated. Now, of course, Pakistan has Sindh, and Pakistan has so much more. But the Punjabi-ness of Punjab in Pakistan and the Punjabi-ness here, I think, are more a binding factor on the whole than a divisive factor. So, if politics is the issue here, then it's not something that rears its head all the time. Again, as I said right in the beginning, I don't want to start giving a lecture on Punjabi politics at this moment, but that's not the issue. There are other fissiparous, if I may use that strong word, tendencies that may come up in discussion, but Pakistan will not come up, to answer specifically what you're saying. I hope that...
No, it does. I think also, I've only been there once, but when I visited Lahore, I was astonished by how that sense of hospitality, which Neha mentioned, they take it just as seriously as we do. They like Hindi films.
And kinship.
Kinship, certainly. We had the pleasure of visiting our ancestral home, which was now occupied by a general of the Pakistani Rangers. And his wife fed my mother the best madeleines that I have ever eaten. So I'm going to take that story and my completely vague... Madeleines are lovely French cookies. They melt in your mouth. And once again, the French influence, but this is a very clever segue into talking about food with Neha. Marcel Proust mentions how, using madeleines as an example, how food can transcend time and space, how it inspires memory. In some way, do you think Punjabi food in particular is able to transport us to the past, to bring us all together, regardless of age or wealth? I don't know. I really have forgotten what my question is, so Neha shall make up an answer.
Talking of memory and food, I think they have such a strong connection. And it's strange, but whichever friend of mine who's a Punjabi, and I talk to them, and they have been all over the world, some have studied in the best colleges, they are settled all over. But if I talk to them, and I've asked this question pointedly because I was trying to work on something to do with food and memory, and all of them, when they think of their childhood, and the one thing which they say, really, it's like, that it's a tug at the heartstrings. The one meal which is I think common amongst most Punjabis is in winters. All Punjabi mothers have fed this to their children, is a thick roti, hot roti with gur and fresh makhan or ghee made at home, and and they minjo it with their hands, and then they have fed it to their children and everyone across the board. I think that is the essence of Punjabi cuisine: their grains, their dairy, and the gur, of course, from the sugarcane fields, and with lots of love. So I think food and memory is definitely, and love. Yeah.
Abha, you mentioned Ranjit Singh. He was very inclusive of Europeans. The Fauji Khas was, largely, in fact, entirely officered by Europeans. And you had emigres from Napoleonic France. You had Polish officers, you had deserters from the British Army, and each of them, in some way or the other, brought European influences to Punjab. And to what degree did you, how evident are these European influences in Punjabi architecture, particularly of the imperial era?
Maharaja Ranjit Singh's army had two generals that were French from Napoleon's armies and one who was Ventura, who was Italian. And apparently even all the army commands were in French. And so that's as how French as an army could get, Allard. But you see you see European influence specifically in the 19th century, because until the 18th century, the forts were very late Mughal, and then because again, craftsmen will go where patronage is. So by the end of the Mughal Empire, the craftsmen from Rajasthan and Delhi, who would have worked in Agra and Delhi and Rajasthan, were not finding patrons within the Mughal court, and you see a distinct shift of them towards Patiala, because you see a lot of Rajasthani influence in the Kila Mubarak within Patiala. But then by the 19th century, there's a shift. And initially, all of them, all these kings would make one palace in the European style and would commission one French architect or a British architect. So you had, so while the Zananas would stay on in the Ranbas in the old Kila, or the Dowager Empress would stay on there, the young king and the prince would move into the more European apartments and begin to entertain Europeans. So you would have the Sheesh Mahal Palace in Patiala, you have the Versailles copy in Kapurthala, and then in other states like Faridkot, for example, the king was completely into the Gothic style. So when you look at Indo-Gothic architecture in Bombay, you don't see it anywhere between Bombay and Shimla until you hit Faridkot, and for all its glory, you have clock towers and very Victorian. You have cinquefoils and quatrefoils and spires and turrets, but built in brick and plaster because stone wasn't available. So you have this at the 19th century, a lot of colonial influences that do come into across the road, across the princely states. Malerkotla, for example, you have the most amazing collection of Maple and Company furniture that was imported by the Nawab of Malerkotla. And one story goes that Maharaja Narinder Singh of Patiala was in Calcutta, and Calcutta had a showroom of the most fabulous chandeliers that were produced in Ireland by a company called Osler and Company, which had one shop in London and one shop in Calcutta. And Narinder Singh was sort of browsing around and perhaps asked the shopkeeper what the price of one chandelier was, and he sort of dismissively said, "You can't afford it." So he bought the whole store. And all the chandeliers were packed and sent to Patiala, and I didn't believe the story till we began the work on restoring the Darbar Hall Patiala, because the Darbar Hall is like this grand hall, and it's chock-a-block full of chandeliers, and they're all of different sizes, different shapes, different colors, and different crystals. But you can see Darbar Hall, and you know that he'd actually not gone to look for particular color, bought the whole store. Yes. Absolutely. And then you look at the jewelry, and you have Cartier, creating the most magnificent neck pieces for the Maharajas of Patiala. So you've got amazing, khulle dil se shopping was happening at that time.
That has not changed.
Hasn't changed.
It's like build a mall and they shall come.
It's so funny, but the Cartier storeroom, the first store opened in Delhi at the Imperial Hotel, I think. And I had a niece who joined Cartier, and she was working at Cartier. So I told her, so who comes there? All those glamorous royals and all these hotshot politicians. And Jitin, I'm not looking at you while I'm talking about this. But she said, no, you have ladies from Ludhiana who come and buy them in bulk and carry them around. So we're still holding the flag for crazy shopping, therapeutic shopping in Punjab.
Retail therapy, they call it.
Well, agricultural income, they can afford it. But Neha, your chapter that was included in this book about princely dining was absolutely fascinating. And to continue retail therapy, you did an earlier book called Dining with the Maharajas. Could you elaborate a little about your research into their lifestyles and what it is about Maharaja's Punjab that captivates you so much?
You know, Maharajas and their lifestyles are often dismissed as being very decadent and, well, they had the money, so they spent it. It really is not that. There was a lot of thought that went behind the whole dining experience. It was not limited to just, you can't say it was gluttony or it was decadence or it was too much of money. It really was, there was a lot of thought put behind the entire dining experience, which started from the way food was going to be served, and that's where some of these Maharajas like Patiala, they commissioned some of the most beautiful dinner sets and cutlery services, dinner services. For example, in this book, there is a picture of this special dinner set. I think it is the largest order of silver and gold dinner set ever placed in the world by any royal house. It was done by Maharaja Bhupinder Singh for a dinner he was going to host at the palace. And it was placed at goldsmiths and silversmiths, which was a very famous, craftsman in the shop in England. And Patiala placed the largest order for this set. And their silver was crafted in Aspreys in England. Everything was matched. There was a lot of thought put behind it. The whole drill was done before guests came, who will be placed where, who will enter how, the food, the presentation, the quality of produce, everything. There were people in charge of the entire dining experience, and they were not just the chefs and their team, but the Prime Minister of the state, of the Punjab state, would actually supervise each banquet. And they were not just looking at which political guest was seated to who or next to who, but what was being served, how it was being served, and the entire experience.
Well, Siddharth, to leave that era behind and come back to contemporary Punjab, just before we started, you were rather annoyed when our friend Asad insisted on Bhangra and Balle Balle. In many ways, I think the idea of being Punjabi has become a series of stereotypes, from Santa Banta jokes to Yash Raj movies and, Bhangra rappers. Does that annoy you?
No, it does not annoy me at all. I was merely, I don't know what the context was. I said, why are we playing this music while we are standing around talking? I think that was the context. But, you mentioned Yashraj and you mentioned this. So one of the interesting historic twists of the tale is that till the 1930s and 40s,
Lahore cinema.
Bombay, Pune, Calcutta and Lahore were the four centers of Indian cinema. Calcutta started dwindling because their big studios died. Pune was a small studio which broke up Prabhat. And Lahore and Bombay split up after the partition. And many people went from here to Lahore, Muslims, and that cinema never revived. But many people came from there. By the 40s, they had already started coming, and they came here in the 40s and the 50s. So what we see today, and we say, why is there so much Punjabiness? And it's awful Punjabiness, I can tell you sometimes, because it's all loud and it's garish and it is appealing to Southall, and we understand all that. But forget the exuberance part of it, but the fact is that it became dominated. One of the less known facts is that even today, after 70 years, Bombay cinema is dominated by Punjabiness. And I would say Punjabi-ness, not merely by the Punjabis, but by Punjabi-ness, because somehow they have worked out this formula which appeals to everybody. Somehow they worked that formula out.
I think if I just may add to that, I mean, you look at
and in fact, I might say you should have had something on that.
Precisely. No, I was just saying that Radhika, there's a whole book on it, ripe for the writing, is on pop Punjabi culture and how it's, I mean, when you look at mainstream Indian entertainment today, and you go into, you know, a nightclub in London or in Bombay, and you'd be having Punjabi rap and Punjabi bhangra and that sort of music, and whatever other new techno music species you have. You look at Indian cinema, and you have this whole generation of Rajinder Kumar, Dharminder, Rajesh Khanna, Raj Kapoor, Punjabi, you know, actors who sort of roll the roost down to all the Akshay Kumars and Yash Chopras making films as well. But what it's also done is, we always talk about Punjabis assimilating multicultural things. But look at the subconscious effect of Punjabis onto the mainstream Indian, largely because of this partition and the migration. But you see the fact that because of our movies and a lot of television serials, things like Sangeets, which were a completely Punjabi wedding ritual, are now playing out in Maharashtrian homes, and Sangeet has become an essential part of a wedding in Gujarati families and South Indian families. As a child, I remember going to Kanchipuram, which is the heart of the weaving tradition, and all the women wore beautiful Kanjivaram saris, and now I'm working in Kanchipuram, and every woman is wearing Punjabis. So all the Tamilian women with gajra in their hair are wearing Punjabi salwar kameezes because they're just easy to get around, and, you know, rather than maybe draping a 6-yard sari. So a lot of these things, fact that I have my Maharashtrian neighbors now putting a whole lot of sindoor and doing Karwa Chauth roundabouts, which is a typically Punjabi, festival. So all this has been sort of mainstreamed by maybe Sridevi's image in some Yash Chopra's movie, but it's sort of somehow sunk into the larger mainstream Indian psyche. So it's it's two-way street.
The Punjabis have taken over the zeitgeist.
Punjabis have also taken over.
That could be the name of the book,
So
Punjabi
pop
Zeitgeist.
Punjabi-ness or whatever.
Well, I'm going to ask one last question before we open up for questions and answers. For all of you, what's your favorite aspect of being a Punjabi? And this is compliments of Ursula.
You go first.
It's a tough question.
It's a very,
Which one?
It's a very tough question, but if I were to be a little serious, I would say the fact that I can feel comfortable anywhere. And I think that may have played a role. If I have to be non-serious, I think it's the food. What she was mentioning with that roti and all that is called churi, I think. But all those small things where you say that it's that you can go anywhere and get some really bastardized version of Punjabi food. But so I suppose those would be.
I'm glad you didn't take the easy way out and say Punjabi ladies. Sorry, for the Punjabi ladies, what is your favorite aspect of being Punjabi?
Punjabi ladies, I can be politically correct.
I agree.
No, I think well, I'm half. I can't even claim to be a full Punjabi, but the whole thing of, let's get on with it, let's live life as it comes and not worry our heads too much. I think that's something that's once seen, come through your grandparents, and it just stays with you. So
Jinne kiti sharam ode phoote karam.
And my old Masi, who is now 90, like, she would say, if you wanted to venture out and do something and you were a little worried about, asking somebody, she would say, "Peer puttar nahi dega te tamba thodi la lega." Like, what goes of your father, man? Do it. We'll think about the consequences later. So I think that's something that has been...
Because tomorrow we may be conquered.
Neha?
Well, I am not a Punjabi, but the one thing which I love about Punjabis is their food, and more than the food, it's the way they make you eat. Everything is hor khao, so it's just eat more, and there's generosity and just this warmth which envelops you when you're around Punjabis. They're just the best friends ever, and the most hospitable.
Would anyone like to ask any questions?
So that was very interesting. My question is, would Punjabiness include like being in the armed forces or sports also? Because a lot of, hockey and other people who have come from the army or even athletics have been, Punjabis or Sikhs.
Absolutely. I think there's this very strong agrarian culture and there's this great macho-ness that sort of transcends all parts of Punjab. So the men would, join the army and there would be a lot of wrestling and sport and hockey and that was very much part of the culture and drinking a lot of dudh, malai, makhan and sort of heavy food. And that definitely is part of the whole subculture of Punjab. What about the future? I am not into predictions, but I think they both have had a shared history, and I have no such political vision, and I stay far away from it. But I think what the book does, coming back to the book, is yes, it looks at both sides and sort of stitches together the dissected history of not only Pakistan and Punjab, but also the trifurcation of Punjab that led to Haryana, Himachal and Punjab, and looks at this holistically as the one great cultural entity that was with the 5 rivers. Because now it's no longer Punjab, it's down to 2 rivers.
So my question is to you, you talked about the architecture and how old from the Mughal invasion. So did you come across any monument which is pre-Mughal, and where if so, and what type? Is there any record of that? Because most of it you were explaining was after the Mughal invasion and later.
The oldest built structures that we have in India are the Indus Valley structures, and Harappa, which happens to be in Punjab, is 5,000 years old. So in a sense, the oldest architectural history of India begins from Punjab with Harappa. In Punjab, in the Indian side of Punjab, in Ropar, and you also have Indus Valley sites, and you also have them. One of the largest Indus Valley sites is in Rakhigadi, which was in erstwhile Punjab and now falls within Haryana. So you have an amazing amount of Indus sites within Punjab. You also have a lot of Buddhist sites. I mentioned Sanghol, not far from Patiala. You have some amazing Buddhist stupas and sites that have Buddhist monasteries. So you have them from that period as well. What hasn't survived are maybe temples from the pre-Islamic period, just because of the amount of invasions that we've had, and obviously that was difficult to have survived.
Has there been any record of what has been destroyed?
The walls of Harappa.
No, this is post Harappa, is what during the Vedic.
Not so much, no, because there's just been so much devastation over time that there's not been too much record of say grand temples or anything. But you have pre-Mughal monuments in terms of a lot of Sultanate period monuments that do dot this region.
Everyone for an amazing discussion. We discussed food, we discussed happiness about the Punjabis, but we haven't paid attention to the names of the Punjabis, Lovely Singh and Honey Singh and Happy Singh. So they portray happiness all through along, not only with food, but the very being a Punjabi. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bajaj.
I just wanted to ask that why is there such a strong Mughal influence on the Gurdwara architecture, in spite of our religion being based on as a war with the Mughals?
See, what I would say is that Gurdwaras, if you look at the 10 Sikh Gurus, from the time of Guru Nanak Dev to the time of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, the storyline runs parallel to the Mughal kingdom. So while you have Akbar making a grant of land for the site of Harmandir Sahib, you also have his descendants Jahangir and Aurangzeb wreaking the worst kind of tortures on Sikh gurus. But the fact remains that they are both contemporaneous. So the Gurdwaras are built, and Sikhism as a religion comes up parallel in history to the Mughal
Then
regime.
we should term it as Sikh architecture, Sikhitecture, rather than Mughal
what you
influence.
do see in the architecture of the Gurudwaras is roots of Sikh I would not call it Mughal architecture, but it's the same period. Like when you say Victorian buildings, it doesn't mean that Queen Victoria commissioned a building in Bombay, but it's of the same period and the reign of Victoria. So a lot of similar styles continue. So you have the arches, but then in this, the Mughal arches would not be so multicast till before the Shah Jahan period. So what Sikh architecture does is take from Mughal multifoil arches, it takes the dome but keeps it more onion dome. It does borrow the Bangaldhar roof form from, which is from Bengal, and also a lot of Rajput elements of architecture. So what it does is hybridizes both Mughal, Islamic as well as Rajput forms of building. And I think that's also correct. I mean, the fact that you have in Harmandir Sahib, you have 4 doors for the 4 major religion and for, for knowledge to come in from any side. The point is that Sikh architecture is a great amalgamation of what was the best of that period, and that's what it stands for.
Yeah, my question to Abha is this. I mean, you've traveled along to Lahore on the other side of the border. You've obviously been into Haryana and Panipat and seen a lot over the years. So my basic question revolving around architecture is this, that what Central Asian influences have you seen? You referred to the Kabuli Mosque. Did you see anything else at all in this big expanse of 400 kilometers west to east?
Oh, absolutely. If you just studied the caravanserais, the 20 caravanserais along the Mughal highway, the fact that you've got the most amazing, specimens of mosques, of cloistered gardens, you have orchards like the Amkhas Bagh in Sirhind, which are beautiful prototypes of Mughal period gardens. So you have Sheesh Mahals, you have hammams, almost every prototype of Mughal architecture is there in Punjab.
But not Rajput or Hindu, but Central Asian is my question.
No, but Central Asian would be then, Kabuli Mosque would be the most pure Central Asian, because after that they started using Indian masons and obviously the Indianness crept in. So in terms of the purity of Samarkand sort of design, it would be definitely the Kabuli Mosque.
Thanks.
I just want to throw some light on the leadership qualities of Punjabis and Sikhs. If some studies there, they are a very industrial belt. I mean, as the word Sardar suggests, is a leader. They were the first ones to sort of kick off the Green Revolution in India, to go and add agriculture in the Canadian economy. In the Italian cheese farms, the Sikhs and Punjabis have dominated again the whole culture there. Australia again, they're dominating. So I think if there's some study on the industriousness, productivity and entrepreneur spirit of this entire community, that would be an interesting one.
That would, I think that's something to add to the second volume that Mark should come out with on Punjab. But my husband was working with Western Union and MoneyGram for many years, and he would visit Punjabi Sikh agriculturists in Italy, and I was shocked that you have Punjabi agriculturalists in Italy sending back money, remittances, and one of the greatest, exactly, so one of the greatest sort of clientele for remittance companies and people who are sending money back home are industrious Punjabis who are working triple shifts, working different, in morning they have a different job and they work double shift just to send money back to their villages. So it's a great amount of industry.
Can I just give you a small kind of illustration of this? And I suppose it fits in with what we've been saying about acceptance and about this. In the 80s, when we were not particularly liberalized, mid to late 80s, Pepsi wanted to come to India. And Pepsi was the first company that made an actual foray into coming to India. They went everywhere. They met a lot of state governments. When you say Pepsi in the 80s kind of economic climate, you mean, foreign invaders, multinational. They were all dirty words at that time. And I remember meeting this, and meanwhile, behind the scenes, quietly, Mr. Amrinder Singh had helped Pepsi get in, and they had set up small experimental farms. And I remember meeting this farmer, and he said to me in Thet Punjabi, which I understand by the way, and not speak but understand, and he called Pepsi Pepsu. Now I don't know how many of you will know Pepsu. So Pepsu is Punjab and East Punjab, something union I think, or something like that. States Union, yeah. So he called it Pepsu because he was from that vintage. And he said, it's great. So I said, how does that cold drink help you? He said, no, they have set up a farm for potato chips. They brought in the latest technology. My potato is now so big, and then they're buying that potato because Lay's chips was going to come, but that was not talked about in those days because only the soft drink was being talked about as a kind of banner. And he said our entire village and the next few villages have absorbed this technology right away because it means our output is going to get better. And if it's the new scientific way of agriculture, we will absorb it. So while there was all this fight going on all over the country and the policymakers were saying, should we not, this was going on. So that's one example of, and if you go to Italy, of course, Parma ham and, there, some Sikh friend of mine met me there and he said, it's not Parma ham, it's Parminder ham. But that's going on now. You're right.
Hello. My question
One last question.
My question is based on traditional Punjabi society. I lived in Chandigarh for a while, and I don't see any difference between a Punjabi Hindu and a Punjabi Sikh. Food-wise, dress, language, everything is the same. But I'm not talking about Bombay where inter-community caste marriages take place. But in the Punjab, in the traditional families, how frequent are the weddings between Sikhs and Punjabi Hindus?
This is something I used to hear about from my aunts and everything, that there was never this distinction until, much later, 60s and 70s, between the Sikhs and the Hindus, because, she would say that Khatriyan de vich vyah hona. So within a community, if a Kapoor boy would marry a Anand or a Bhatia would marry a Lamba, it would not matter whether that person was Sikh or Hindu. And in a lot of families, they would say that Pehle munde nu Sikh banande san, so the first child would be a Sikh and the others would be Mona. So it was just a division in terms of Sikh and Mona, which means with hair or without hair. But the whole concept of Hinduism and Sikhism and no intermarriages and no intermingling was never the concept, even till I was growing up in Amritsar and Chandigarh. And I think this is something which was it was dualistic and very beautiful, and that's why when you hear of Maharaja Ranjit Singh gifting the Kohinoor to the Jagannath Puri temple, this sense of, the fact that both, Banda Singh Bahadur was a Kashmiri Hindu who was the first of the great martial warriors of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and Guru Gobind Singh and his father themselves were willing to fight Aurangzeb for the cause of Kashmiri Pandits in Jammu and Kashmir. So it wasn't really this thing of divisive identities, but really a lot of intermingling.
Well, sorry, but we've run out of time. Next time, I promise, the Punjabis love to talk. We'll be back soon. But I'd like to thank Abha and Siddharth and Neha for being here and for giving me the chance to ask you some very strange questions. Thank you, and it's a wonderful book, and I urge you all to read it and try it, and we look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our wonderful panel for a very absorbing and entertaining discussion. We do encourage you to take your questions to them personally after the session. We'd like to thank Mark Foundation and Yes Global Institute for collaborating with us. And as usual, thank you for being here, being engaged, being enthusiastic. We have 2 exciting workshops coming up on film appreciation and design thinking, so do pick up flyers, check us out on social media, and remember, learning never stops.